David Miller is also managing director of C40. That's an organization that connects cities and mayors around the world in the fight against climate change. Vancouver is a member city of C40. And David Miller joins us now. Hello there, and a good morning to you.
Good morning, Gloria.
So what did you make of Vancouver's decision this summer to roll back the restrictions on natural gas in new buildings?
It's a really terrible decision, and it's a terrible decision for a very simple reason. We all think of gas as something benign. It isn't. It's methane, which is a very serious greenhouse gas. And because of leaks in the pipeline system that supply gas, it is almost as bad for the climate as coal. It's not sold that way, but it is. So if you think of coal instead of gas, in essence, what council said is we're going to allow new buildings, instead of using modern ways, innovative ways to heat and cool, we're going to allow them to use this incredibly polluting substance. The fact they did it on no notice was even more shocking. Vancouver was a leader. Their building code was probably the best in North America, and looking forward to saying, how can we live in a low carbon society? And it matters because all over North America, a huge user of gas is how we heat and cool buildings. So Vancouver was a precedent in showing how to do it. And at the last minute, with no notice, they apparently changed their mind.
Yeah, you mentioned no notice. Even some councillors were taken off guard with that one. But what about the impact on your organization, C40? I know membership in C40, this is based on performance, a performance that's reviewed annually rather than fees. So what impact could this have on Vancouver's status?
Well, there's a review process for C40. We're a membership-based organization, originally 40, but now 97 of the mayors of the world's great cities. Vancouver, as everybody knows, has played a huge leadership role. We should be proud of that as Canadians. And, if they fail to be leaders and fail to reach their climate targets, they would be putting their membership at risk. There's a whole process to evaluate that, and I can't really speak to the result, but it certainly raises the question.
Well, and this move could also mean that the city falls out of step with provincial requirements as well. The report before council today, it says burning natural gas in buildings is the largest source of carbon emissions in the city. So that's 57% of emissions. So what could a conflict of regulations mean for buildings already in progress by 2026 or maybe just getting started?
Well, one of the real problems with this kind of last minute change is it eliminates certainty. The former Vancouver Economic Commission had done a very good job in working with suppliers of components to buildings to help build supply chains for the new regulations that were coming to ensure that we had low or zero carbon buildings as new buildings in Vancouver. And that's important in an industry like this. You need to think ahead. And when there's an abrupt policy change, first of all, the policy change is a disaster from a climate perspective. I need to be really clear about that. It is abundantly wrong. But secondly, what it does is make the industry wonder, is there going to be certainty? Do we need to change our supply chain? And once you embed something like gas in new buildings, it's not just here for this year. It's here for the life of that building. And that's why it's such a critical mistake. And it's so important to act today and think about what buildings do we need 10 years from now, 30 years from now, 50 years from now, because what we're building today are those buildings, and they need to have a very minimal or zero negative impact on the planet, which is eminently possible today. We don't need to build polluting buildings like they're proposing to do now.
Well, and as you're well aware, there's a big affordability crisis on right now. And this report to council also says that allowing developers to choose gas heating is not expected to improve affordability or accelerate housing approvals, and that buildings that opt to use the gas compliance path will have significantly higher carbon emissions, which will make it more challenging to reach Vancouver's 2030 climate targets, may incur future costly retrofits. So what I'm getting at here, if staff are saying this would not streamline development approvals or improve affordability or allow the city to meet its own climate targets, what benefits are there? Who benefits from this?
Well, the only benefit is to gas companies and people who are affiliated with them. And one of the real concerns about what Vancouver did was this motion came without notice. There was no staff report like there is now. There was nothing to make the case so members of council could understand. And according to reports, the mayor's key advisor on this has interests in the natural gas industry. And, I was in municipal politics for 16 years. When that kind of thing happens, you have to declare a conflict, both the staff person and the elected official he's working for, in this case, the mayor. That wasn't done. And it really does raise serious concerns, I think, when somebody stands potentially to benefit from a change of regulation and is actively working on the issue. That's not right from a public perspective. And I think it illustrates when you rush to make policy like this, you can make very, very serious errors, which Vancouver did.
Well, and what's your experience as mayor of Toronto, with how much sway lobbyists can have at City Hall?
Well, it was a huge issue in my mayoral election in 2003. We created a lobbyist registry, created all sorts of new rules about ethics, a new auditor general. There's nothing wrong with people making their case, but it should be in public, not in secret. And elected officials in the municipal level are very, very careful to declare conflicts. We would declare conflicts if there was a development proposal near where we lived because it might impact the value of your house or your apartment. For example, we were very careful not to be seen to be voting on something where there was self-interest. And I think this is a really important example, particularly given it happened on no notice. The mayor apparently phoned in from vacation to make the vote. It really does create a real doubt about whether this regulation was in the best interest of residents of Vancouver or in the self-interest of one employee.
Well, in Vancouver Council, they had a motion put forward recently to set up a lobbyist registry, in fact. That was not passed by council. It was put forward by Councillor Pete Fry. How do you think Vancouver could or should address this whole issue of transparency around lobbyists?
I think a lobbyist registry is very important because residents can then judge when they see who councillors or the mayor's office are speaking to. They can judge and they can see for themselves whether people are exercising their votes in the public interest or have been unduly influenced. It certainly has been highly effective in Toronto. And I think Vancouver's a big government of a big city. Certainly as big as some provinces by population. And I think sophisticated ways of governing, like having a lobbyist registry, are very important.
Listen, David Miller, really a pleasure to hear from you and get your perspective on some of our own civic political issues. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Gloria. Let's hope common sense takes over today.
That is David Miller. He is the managing director of C40. And he's also the former mayor of Toronto. We're just having this conversation in advance of today's Vancouver City Council meeting. Could be a contentious one. This whole question of natural gas heating will once again come before council later today.